Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by Listening Room Network. Today's guest, singer-songwriter Jesse Terry. And we are live with Jesse Terry. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Tell the folks at home where you are. Where you're broadcasting from Lily's Castle in what city?
Disney World. We live up in Stonington, Connecticut, on the very near Westerly, Rhode Island, kind of like in between, just north of Mystic, Connecticut. It's a beautiful little spot, and I do my shows and interviews and stuff in Lily's nursery, because of some neighbors that complain on the other side, the other wall. Nice. So everything's in here. So my concerts are in here, and it's a nice positive vibe, like, especially during COVID, to be looking at rainbows and castles.
You might even say it's enchanting.
It is enchanting, yeah. I'm not upset about it, yeah.
So I'm not going to go through your extensive list of credits. I will definitely put some of that in the show notes. I'll just highlight a few things. Jesse's an amazing singer-songwriter. He's won the John Lennon Songwriting Contest. He's won CMT and SAI International Songwriting Competitions. He's played tons of festivals, including ours, Listening Room Festival. But, a step down or two, there's Tin Pan South and Bonnaroo.
I love Listening Room Festival. Love it.
For all the people who have gone to Berklee in their credits, you're one of the people who actually graduated from Berklee. So kudos to you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, I did.
Well, it hasn't seemed to hurt you. There's been two things that I've listened to in quarantine like crazy, and that is the Paul Simon box set that a friend loaned me. I've been listening to those 12 CDs nonstop, except for when I'm listening to one of your recent records. You've put out so many great records, but currently this is my favorite, Kivalina, that you did with Alex Wong.
Yeah,
it's a short EP, 6 songs, but man, you can just listen to it all day long. It's just really great stuff. And in our interview today, I want to come back to this and spend a couple minutes talking about some of the things that really stand out to me on this that I love. And especially for singer-songwriters out there, I want to sort of highlight some of the vocal stuff that you do that really thrills my ears. So how are you, man? How are you coping with this whole COVID situation?
I'm good. I think it's always, we have our challenges and our days, of course, like everybody else, but I feel very, very fortunate and blessed during this time that I get to continue to make music and continue to plan. And but yeah, I mean, I'd say it's gotten easier, like the first few months were pretty chaotic and pretty stressful. Like I said, like I'm sure every other artist and manager and agent and venue in the world felt the same thing, but just like I've never experienced that kind of sudden, no one has, that sudden blow to your whole world and your livelihood. And I was in New Zealand at the time, and we had to actually rush back from New Zealand before they closed the border. And like my brother-in-law's wedding was canceled a couple days before that, and it was just a crazy time.
Yeah, it's a major shock, and the repercussions keep adding up. This is going to be one for the history books. Most people have like certain years that stand out, but this is one of those years that's going to stand out for everybody.
Yeah, and it will change us, and I think we have to. I have this line in one of my songs called "Pick Your Universe," and it's become a bit of a mantra for me, and like things didn't really start getting positive for me and my family until we got back into therapy, and we have an amazing therapist, and she really started helping us look at the positives and look at the things that we can work on during this time to be better people and to be better artists. And I feel like some of the things that I'm working on personally are going to help me. Eventually we'll get back out onto the road, and I have a lot of faith in science. I'm definitely a glass half full kind of guy, even though right now this is the time to be safe and I'm very careful. I think some of the things I'm working on as far as, meditation, as far as health, as far as fitness, all the different things that we're working on now, setting up a home recording studio, setting up a new business for my wife because she lost her job in early April as well. All those things are going to help us, and I think make us more successful in the future.
That's great. Without getting too personal, I just, there's so many people going through these types of issues. I'm curious in terms of going to therapy or having therapy. Um, has this situation exacerbated or put pressure on things that were already challenging in the relationship, or is it just like this whole new set of problems that just like that came out of nowhere?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, and I'm kind of an open book. I usually get into these interviews and I say things and I'm like, "Oh, I've never told anyone that before," you know? And like that's okay. It's kind of like songwriting, you know, at a certain point you're like, "Ah, screw it." You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
that stuff usually comes from being open and totally honest, but yeah, no, I think the issues were there before, and at first um, they amplified those issues, and and then now I feel like our relationship is better than ever, and I feel like my relationship with myself is better than ever, and we want to continue working on that. So in some ways, I'm grateful that it got so rough there for a couple months
Yeah.
because you know it really forces you to to look at yourself and to look at your relationship. And for me, like I've always struggled with anxiety, so this became like a time where, I mean, of course, COVID is not an ideal time to handle that. So that's been a big thing that I've worked on with my therapist, and actually kind of tapered off medication for anxiety during this time, which
Mm.
I haven't told anybody.
And so
And carefully, you know.
so the nature of the anxiety is it, for me, like biggest cause of my anxiety is impatience,
Yeah,
perfectionism and impatience, and I just want things to happen now, and
yeah,
when they're not
yeah.
happening perfectly, it drives me nuts. Is it something of that nature or deeper or more profound thing going on?
I think it's in my family,
Mm.
but also I had this really intense job in Nashville out of college, you know, writing songs as a staff writer for a living, and
Yeah.
I think doing that for 5 years and dealing with that, and then that company ending, going out of business in the Great Recession, and struggling, and then that whole in the whole transition to becoming a full-time touring artist, we get so much adulation, but we also have so much rejection, of course, as an
Mhm.
artist. And I think it took COVID for me to realize that I really needed to handle that and be better equipped to handle that rejection, and to handle not even always rejection. Sometimes it's just indifference, you know, like you send out, you know, 50 booking emails and no one gets back to you, and you're just like,
Right.
what's the deal here? How many emails do I have to send out? I mean, like eventually my calendar is full, but like, so I think just that journey of going through that is usually doesn't mesh that well with an artist, especially when you have to stay vulnerable and open.
Mhm.
So I think that balance between like having, you know, a thicker skin. My manager always tells me to thicken up my skin, you know what I mean? But like you have to stay vulnerable, and you have to have empathy and stay vulnerable to write these songs and to perform them.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I think there's so many artists right now who are, I mean, people in all kinds of careers going through these massively transformative things that shakes you at your core.
yeah,
Like how am I going to pay the bills next month? On
right,
top of all the other anxiety that you have from day to day.
right. Yeah,
So this
yeah,
stuff's massive, and I certainly appreciate what you're going through. So let's talk about the 5 years as a staff writer. I think a lot of singer songwriters typically, either crave stardom and playing the big stages and all that kind of thing, or you crave a career as the unknown songwriter who's secretly writing the hits for the others. Um,
right, right.
that opportunity has shrunk so drastically
Oh yeah,
in the past decade, and I'm curious if you knew at the time how rare it already was back then to be able to make a living writing, and
sure.
then certainly you can reflect on how much that's changed in the past 10 years.
Yeah, if I would still do it, is that the question?
Well,
or
I think, at the time, because obviously ending the songwriting deal has to be a letdown. But
sure.
when you were in it, how quickly did the thrill wear off? Or did it become just like, hey, this is my day job. I just got to show up and do the work. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
you have to be inspired to some extent. I don't want to overstate that.
No, no, it did. Like I'm extremely grateful for that time that I had, and to meet all those people and to see how different people write. But towards the end of it, I was pretty burned out, and pretty burned out on writing being that kind of, not that all country music is like that, but I felt like the process was getting very formulaic to me,
Mhm.
you know. Um, Even though I do believe in sitting down and working and going to work, I wanted to be more inspired. And I will admit it was pretty tough there. Like in that last couple of years, it was a 5-year deal, so that last couple of years was pretty tough, and I probably would have quit if it wasn't, and done something else if it wasn't for the money. I just didn't know how to. I didn't know how else to get a paycheck.
Right.
Uh, but it's such an amazing job, so it's hard to even say that you'd quit like taking a paycheck to write songs. But you're writing songs, co-writing with other people, and you're chasing this big dream, and it's so fueled by, as you said, by the big hit, by like, making that $500,000 and then getting more hits and being able to live this great lifestyle that in obscurity, where nobody knows who you are. That was a big dream kind of out of college, and it just
Sure.
shifted so much.
Yeah. And so you went straight from being a staff writer to hitting the road. And that's about the
Yeah.
time that you and I connected when you joined our site.
Yeah.
The, how radical was that shift for you?
Mm. It was pretty radical. And I think that's kind of where, well, it was totally radical. I fell in love in another part of the world in the South Pacific, and probably wrote you in the middle of the South Pacific somewhere, and started booking house concerts and found the love of my life, and she agreed to come on the road with me and play all these shows, with I had no fan base. I had no artist career at all. So
Yeah.
just starting from scratch, that was a great experience. But yeah, I was so nervous, and there was all those things about performing that you don't know as a staff songwriter. That's not part of your world. Maybe you play the Bluebird, or you play like a show in Nashville once a month, but that's not the same as playing 150 shows a year, and that's not the same thing. So it was a totally massive shift. You know,
Right.
yeah,
From treating, songwriting almost like a 9 to 5 job, and then, living in a car
yeah, yeah,
for years had to be
yeah,
something. And now you're touring with a baby girl. Is that
yeah.
another radical shift? Or has that been easier or harder than you thought?
It's actually easier than I thought.
Yeah.
Because I have my wife, of course, I couldn't do it without my wife, and that's been another thing about COVID and her losing her job, is that Lily and Jess will be with me like almost all the time. Jess will be blogging, and Jess will be taking photographs, and it'll truly be a full family adventure, even when we're overseas.
She's your staff photographer and staff blogger.
Yeah, we like it's truly a family business now. Full family business, and which is crazy and really exciting and scary. All those feelings wrapped into one. But yeah, there's been some we also tour with our dog Harrison when we're in the States for the most part. So there's always been some challenging things, but I think the positives of that like so far outweigh the negatives. And Jess has been incredible. Obviously, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to do it without her.
Is she also helping on the live streaming front? That's another radical shift that certainly
Yeah.
you're not alone in taking. What's been the biggest challenge for you to adjust to doing concerts at home, in your own home, instead of
Right.
concerts in
Yeah.
other people's
Yeah.
homes?
Well, it was so weird at first. I really didn't like it at all. Just the lack of connection, like the lack of applause. Obviously, there's still no applause unless I'm doing like a Zoom like house concert and they like unmute the people, at the
Right.
end of the song, which is kind of weird and kind of cool. Um, but now we've been doing these shows from the nursery for like, well, since May, like every week, and there's been this really amazing community that's been built there, and they come to the shows every single week, and I see the comments, and after the show there's like 600 comments. I go through all of them on like
Yeah.
Monday and Tuesday,
Yeah.
write everyone back, and it's really been incredible, like just all the comments and then the messages I get about how much it's helped them during this time, and how it's been a really positive thing. And for us, of course, it's been so positive because it's given us a part-time job, and this community of people who want to support us and want to keep the music going. And it's been really affirming. If you ever thought about quitting music, you've got all these people over here saying, no, no, we need this. Stop thanking us. We're thanking you. You know what I mean? And it's a very nice give and take. Like I think we're all grateful for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that's super palpable in the house concert scene,
Yeah.
and it's good that at least part of that translates online. So you've settled into a regular schedule. You do every Sunday or what?
Almost every Sunday. I've got like I think the next few weekends I have like outdoor socially distanced concerts, of course, weather permitting. And
Right.
the forecast calls for rain on Sunday. But for the most part we do every Sunday. I expect that we'll do that into the fall and winter. I never thought it would last this long, but
Yeah.
I keep telling people that I'll keep playing as long as they keep tuning in and tipping if they're able to tip, and so far the numbers are only growing.
That's great. Do you feel pressure from week to week to bring out a new song, or do you get enough requests that keeps you sort of refreshing your back catalog?
Yeah, yeah, it's become like really a request show, and I think that's part of the way that people feel connected to it, and I'm able to thank people because I work on their songs during the week, including covers.
Oh, so they're requesting ahead of time for next week.
Yeah. Well, I write the people that tip, and the people that don't tip are still able to like make requests in the comments. I play songs for them too, but it really keeps me busy, and I'm going to start writing new songs soon and working on more projects. Like the first kind of part of this COVID time was really just applying for grants, figuring out what you're doing. We had to like organize the workspace here, and that took like months because we live in like a 1 bedroom loft, and there's 4 of us including the dog. So we go like get a storage unit. So now that's all done. Like we love we've never been home for so long, and we love it here
Right.
like more than ever. So I mean we'll be excited to go back out on the road when it's safe to do so. But
Yeah.
uh,
It must be interesting to actually be able to live in the place that you're renting.
it's weird. Yeah, it's really weird. It's really weird. Like
Nor-
it'll be a transition. Well, I have a bunch of shows in Florida in January, but I'm pretty iffy about those. But we'll see what happens. I'm kind of planning on like May, June of next year starting back up full time, and I'm very hopeful that that happens. But I just think it'll be a really big transition in that way as well.
I was going to say that it's nice. We're starting to see more and more green shoots. We're seeing more and more positivity and conviction that, by spring of
Hmm.
next year, that we'll have some increased sense of normalcy, whatever that may exactly look like. We don't know, but
Right.
we do see some hosts that are booking the spring, and
Good.
just figuring, we're going to make it work. If we have to keep socially distancing, we'll keep doing it. But we're going to move forward. We're going to book shows. We're going to
Yeah.
get back into live music again. So that's
Yeah.
super encouraging.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
getting ready to announce that we'll probably move our festival, which was postponed from March to November. We're going to
Right.
wind up postponing it a full year and move it to early March. The more I read, the more encouraging the news is in terms of herd immunity and
Yeah.
all that. So,
I think so.
um,
Yeah.
our challenge is that a good chunk of our audience is at risk, because we have so
Yeah,
many baby boomers in our network. So
it
we
was
have to be
here.
certainly careful with them, but
Yeah,
also everybody has their own responsibility to keep themselves safe. And if
yeah,
you're vulnerable, then you have options.
right.
If you're enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists that we support. Your feedback makes a real difference. I was curious also about downtime. A lot of artists are finding new projects, new things to tackle.
Downtime.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Let's just talk about the 5 hours a day that you're not driving anymore. Uh,
Right, yeah.
so I think you mentioned you starting to pick up the harmonica again, maybe a little piano. What are you doing?
Oh yeah, well, I do have my harmonicas out. I haven't started and my piano, and I haven't learned either one yet.
Okay.
And I got a recording studio, set up that I'm just starting to learn, which is very exciting. And we're hoping we might even do a Christmas album and like start working on it really soon. But yeah, I think like we lost our childcare. We had a great mother's helper that was very flexible. So when we were home, we used to have time. So we've kind of lost that. So Jess has been, of course, I spend a lot of time with Lily, and Jess spends even more time with her right now. But we have all these projects. Like we just have to figure out. I mean, time is always the most elusive thing. I mean, between like rescheduling next year, my new album was supposed to come out in July of 2020, so that's coming out next year, I think in June. So moving all that stuff. I mean, luckily I hadn't started the PR campaigns and stuff yet. I was just about to. So moving all that stuff, and then in between that, just finding time to write new songs. I think that's so important that you're still creating and not just talking about. I wanted to do this podcast and this interview, but I'm learning how to say no, because there's so many people that write and say, "Hey, we talk about not procrastinating," and I'm like, "Yeah, I will." I'm like, "I'm really sorry, but like not procrastinating for me is to say no. I'm gonna write that day." You know what I mean? Not this. This is fantastic. I would never say no to you, but we've got that, and then my wife is a brilliant photographer. Kind of put that aside when she came to America and started getting other jobs. So she's getting big into that, which will mean that she's also doing like the press shots for me and beautiful videos and stuff like that. So we're keeping more things in-house, maybe doing a Patreon, and then also launching a family blog kind of about our journey and how that transitions into next year, when the girls will be even like a bigger part of the journey, and just kind of how we move forward as a traveling family, because we don't want to ever separate. I have a feeling we might even homeschool Lily like from the road. I'd like to teach her about the world by showing her the world, and so we're going to blog about all that and just
That's fantastic.
Just try to capture as like we just want to, including Jess, we just want to release as much art and beautiful content into the world as possible, and just capture kind of what we're already doing, like not create maybe another thing, but if we're already touring or if we're already creating music, just write about that. We're already parenting in a very unconventional way, so might as well just talk about that thing that we're already doing.
Yeah, and it's kind of full circle, right? You guys met on a cruise in the South Pacific, and you were playing music, and she was doing photography on the cruise.
Exactly. It's like, why did we ever change? Why did we change anything?
Full circle. I love it. I'm curious about the decision to postpone the release of the record for a full year. The obvious thing is you want to be able to tour with it, but was there more to the decision than that, in terms of, because a lot of people now are just releasing music without touring behind it. So I'm curious.
Right. You can do anything now, I mean, if I make a recording next week, I could decide to just drop a single out of nowhere, which I think is so cool too. But yeah, the amount of money behind all those campaigns and all kinds of DJs that aren't even in their offices, and in their radio stations, and you have press outlets where so many people got let go. Not to be like doom and gloom,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of great music that got released, and I think that's so important to do that during this time. But I have this record called When We Wander, like ready to release, and even the title alone made me feel like the universe was telling me like maybe this isn't the year for like wandering, like like an album about that journey, and like it just didn't feel like the right time. There's so much going on in the world, and sometimes I don't even want to post about on social media or something, because there's something going on that I feel is so much more important.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you used to tour the world, and now you tour the living room, right?
right, yeah, yeah. I mean, it would have I totally would have released it if money wasn't. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's more than just money, because it is about touring behind it, and I really, really believe. I know people always say that, but I really feel very strongly about this new record. And we recorded it totally live, which was like a new thing for me. It's like to sing and play at the same time, and like totally be in that moment, and like hear a steel guitar or a fiddle or something, like play something for the very first time, and having the vocal and the emotions react to that other thing that someone else is doing. I've never experienced that before, and it was just like a revelation to me. And I love the record, and I love the emotion on it, and I wanted to make sure I could tour behind it.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. I tell you, I've got at least 6 of your records. I don't know how many you have, but there
That's about it.
you always do an exceptional job. So speaking of which, one of the things I want to start doing in these interviews is highlighting sort of the gifts of my guest, and especially from songwriting or performing standpoint, so that hosts and in our network can get maybe a slightly deeper appreciation for the craft of what you do,
Yeah.
and also for any aspiring singer songwriters out there, or people just looking to level up. What's funny about you and I is, when I first started hearing you play, I was impressed with the guitar playing. I was like, okay, man, this guy's really good. And then, of course, your songwriting hit me as well. And when you said that you went to Berkeley, I just figured you were, composition guitar major, and was surprised to find out you were a vocal major. And I always liked your voice, but what you do with it is often really subtle. You don't do a lot of the crazy soul singer turns, and
Yeah.
we never feel like you're trying to impress people with your voice.
Right. Yeah.
But as I go deeper and deeper into your records, I keep noticing these super cool, subtle things that you do with a line, with a word, with timing, with the timbre of your voice. It's I I didn't go to Berkeley. I don't know how much of that they tease out of you in certain classes. Is there
Right.
I'm sure there's got to be classes on phrasing, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess more of the classes on phrasing were just like listen to Ella Fitzgerald, or listen to
Do that.
like do that. Like here, like what he he's not being like Sinatra or Ella. Like they're not being lazy right there. They're like they're behind the beat, or they're ahead of it, or they're like they're swinging, or what, what I mean. Like it just being exposed to that was really wonderful, and
And
to
that's
have to talk about.
yeah, so that's the perfect segue. So this record that I've been listening to like crazy, Kivalina, that you did with Alex Wong, who's a wonderful singer songwriter producer.
Yeah.
There's a song on here called Landfall, and when I edit this, hopefully I'll be able to just pop a little clip in there of it, just because
Cool.
otherwise I have to sing it. But you've got this line that who would believe such a crazy thing, right? Who would believe such a crazy thing?
Huh?
But one of the things I noticed, maybe not on the first listen, maybe not on the 10th listen, but eventually I caught on when you get to that last word, who would believe such a crazy thing? There's a little pause in there. And what I find remarkable, I'll get to a question eventually here. What I find remarkable about the song is evocative. It's difficult to really know what's going on in the story. I don't know if it's an alien invasion or somebody leaving a war-torn country. I don't exactly know what's going on, but there's all these wonderful images and pictures, and you have this really soothing melody. that
Right.
is going throughout the whole song. And that little delay that you throw on the vocal and the chorus is just a little something that reminds you that this is not all smooth.
Right. Yeah.
My question to you is do you remember how that part of the vocal evolved? I understand it might have been Alex first or you first, or is it something that happened accidentally and then let's do them all like that? Or
Right. Although I trust Alex, his instincts, as a co-writer and as a producer. I can't remember. I think like the job of a songwriter and a producer is to have, well, prosody, which is a very
Mhm.
Berkeley word, everything married and working together, so kind of like what you said, like that's a great compliment that maybe we were making people feel a little off balance, because Kivalina is about a Alaskan village that's going underwater because of climate change,
Ah,
so
okay.
it's a concept EP. It's the whole story is about that journey from them finding out to envisioning when, well, it's supposed to be underwater by 2025, so not very far away, and just
Mhm.
envisioning what it'll be like to leave. So I think during the whole EP, even though there's some very sweet melodies and harmonies and stuff, it's about kind of keeping that feeling of being off balance a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just one example of, hundreds and hundreds of nice little touches that you find. And if you're a singer songwriter, really you could make a college course out of studying Jesse's stuff. There's just so much
Thanks,
great
Brent.
stuff from a songwriting, from a melodic phrasing, production. Everything is just always so well presented and thought out. There's another song that it's one of your fan favorites, the song about your grandmother.
Noise.
Noise. Thank you.
Yes,
And
yeah.
little things like all the world is noise. When you sing world, there's a little turn there, and it's a
Yeah.
little subtle thing. Um, but there's so many of those little moments in your songs that sort of bring a little smile to me because it's one of those things you might not recognize. You just enjoy it. But as a
Yeah.
singer songwriter, sometimes you catch you go, oh, okay, that was really cool.
That's cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let me just push the question a little deeper and see if it jars anything in you. In your songwriting process, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, so I know that a lot of this just kind of comes naturally, and you feel a pocket in the song where you can stretch out a little bit vocally, or a word like world is just crying out for some kind of change in it. But is there active discussion between you and the producer about how to tackle a certain phrase, or is that stuff 99% thought out before you even get in the studio? Because you've worked with a lot of producers. You don't produce all your own records.
No, no, I don't. I've never produced one. Maybe I think I co-produced one.
Yeah,
Maybe this one that I'm doing from home, I'll probably produce that, I guess,
yeah.
or at least most of it. I mean, I really haven't had too many of those discussions. I did a little bit more on that Stargazer and Natural albums
Yeah,
that were more produced, and Stargazer was layered up to the point where we had left room for a string section, so
yeah.
everything really thought out, and also how you'd sing lines so you could harmonize them, and it wouldn't be like that Mariah Carey thing where you'd have to harmonize to some note that's going all over the place. Like, that doesn't sound very good. Well, it sounds good if you're Mariah Carey, but
Right.
you're doing more of a, if you're following the Beatles or the Beach Boys, because like they know they're harmonizing that, so it's straight.
Yeah. So in working with the various producers, like what do you most look for when you're working for a producer? That could be going for a certain sound that they're known for.
Yeah,
Aside from business things, like maybe the doors that they can open, that kind of thing. But in terms of, again, the craft of making a great record,
right.
making your songs as great as they possibly can, are there certain things where you feel like you need the most complimenting on your skill set?
Um, yeah, I definitely feel like I personally need someone to steer the ship, and especially with this live record when you're just doing like 3 or 4 vocal takes, and there's absolutely no tuning. There's no way to like dissect a vocal like if you're overdubbing. You really have to trust the producer because the artist will continue to say, "Oh, I've got one more. I've got one more." To be like, "I've got one more better in me." And sometimes that's true, but usually it's not. Usually if you're a good singer, or if you're a singer that can sing in tune and stuff, you're going to get it like in the 3 or 4 takes, and after that, it starts being diminishing returns or coming back, just needing to come back to it. So I think trust is the most important thing, and also just knowing that the producer is passionate about what you do. I've always talked to them about like the vision for the record, and then after that, it's not like you don't speak up in the studio or you don't make your feelings known, but you kind of let them steer a little bit, unless you want to co-produce it. Mm-hmm. So I felt that's very important for me to stay out of the way a little bit and not be so type A. Like Nielsen Hubbard, who I made this new record with and who I've made, this will be the 3rd record I've made with him. And we did one little EP as well. He won't allow that. He's the nicest guy in the world. But like, if you start acting like the producer in the room, he might say like, "Hey, do you want to just you want to take a walk for a second?" And I love that about him. Like, he knows that it's a very sacred place, that studio and that creative process and what you're doing. And, that's why we don't really have anybody else in the studio as well. Because if you have someone that starts messing with the singer or starts messing with the drummer and gets in their head a little bit, it makes them second guess things instead of being in the moment. So I love how with Nielsen, like if we're not on the right track, it's like his job to be like, "I don't think this is it. Let's go for someone else, guys. Like, let's try this. Let's try like a halftime feel, or let's, Jesse, like, not sure if what you're doing is the right vibe, or, open up. You sound a little nasally today, or whatever." You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you really trust him to steer that ship.
That really makes me think of one of the biggest challenges that I ever had trying to record music, is I was always wearing the producer's hat as I'm trying to be a musician.
Yeah.
And it's debilitating because you're just second guessing everything that you do.
Yeah.
So the idea of having someone in charge that you trust, that, they've got a track record, they're absolutely looking out for you and for the music, and you can just let go about all that other stuff. If you can just fully trust them and just be a musician, deliver.
Well, yeah, because it's so easy to be self-critical, I mean, performing as well. You need to like let that down as well when you're performing, and just like practice as much as you can and learn as much as you can. But then when you get on stage, you can't be thinking about, where your diaphragm is, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be thinking about the emotion, and the same thing is true in the studio and recording live, and also just trusting Nielsen and getting a little older and more experienced and having more time under my belt, I think has allowed me to kind of put down the baseball bat and just be like, okay, you're good at what you do, and hopefully always growing, but let's just get in the studio and not edit yourself as you're, let your producer do that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it is when I record next door by myself.
Let Lily be the producer. Just let it go.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Awesome. Jesse, thanks so much for making time. I know you're busy, and I know you got a lot going on, and you're adjusting to a lot. So I'm grateful for the time. I think I've made it clear that I'm a big fan of your work, and I certainly want to encourage people to
likewise, Fran,
to keep track. Your next project is named
When We Wander.
When We Wander. So, and that'll be out sometime next summer.
Yeah, next year. Website is jesseterrymusic.com. Of course, they can find me on the Listening Room Network as well.
Yes, and so you're starting to book. May is kind of your launching point for next year?
Yeah, May, June,
okay.
Kind of keeping it open, like, so that things are safe before then, and maybe there's a vaccine and great therapies and stuff. I'm open. As far as launching, that's what I feel is a good time to shoot for.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, my best to your family. Look forward to seeing you back here in St. Petersburg sometime next year. I believe it'll happen.
Me too.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks, brother.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover our community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions that you have. You can email me at fran@listeningroomnetwork.com. Fran Snyder Podcast, brought to you by Listening Room Network and TrueFire.com. Learn, practice, play.